Welcome back. President Cyril Ramaphosa has announced that apartheid struggle icon Duma Nokwe will be awarded the title of Senior Counsel posthumously this weekend. Nokwe was the first African advocate of the Supreme Court of the Transvaal. He died in exile and has been repatriated to South Africa. For more on this, I'm now joined by Advocate Pule Seleka, who's the chairperson of the Legal Practice Council. Advocate, thank you so much for your time and for joining us this afternoon. So, Advocate Nokwe has been awarded posthumously that title of Senior Counsel. What does this recognition mean for the legal profession?
Yes, thank you, Butler. Good afternoon to your viewers. The conferral of SOG marks a historic moment for the legal profession. And this is in the context of Duma Nokwe being the first African to have joined the Johannesburg Bar back in 1956, at the time when the racial discriminatory laws were precluding him from becoming an advocate, along with his counterparts who were practicing in a building designated for that purpose by the Johannesburg Bar, as we call it, the Johannesburg Society of Advocates. At that time, as an advocate, he could not practice to the point where he could earn his experience to acquire the recognition to be conferred with this status. And so it is a significant achievement and milestone that has been supported by all the professional members of the legal profession.
No, it most certainly is. And I mean, you speak of him being the first black advocate admitted to the bar under very deep discriminatory conditions back in the times of apartheid. How do you reflect on that very milestone, especially in the context of today's legal landscape?
Yes, it truly brings introspection and looking back at the changes and reforms that have taken place in our country since then. Duma Nokwe was admitted in 1956. He was unable to practice freely as he would otherwise have wanted to, as we do today. I was saying at the memorial lecture to the people who were there that over 47 years later, after his admission to the bar, and short stint really at the bar, we established a group after his name in order to carry on the legacy of Duma Nokwe. So the change is significant, and we still have many more changes to achieve in the legal profession and reforming it to where we would like it to be.
And I mean, just staying on that, Advocate, in terms of those changes, I mean, like you say, we've come a really long way. He was denied access to those chambers, like you say. How far do you think we still need to go as a country in addressing some of those changes and what still is systematic issues, especially within the legal profession, and how some people don't have access?
That's a good question. You see, the challenges that Duma Nokwe faced at the time were brought about by the legal regime and the legal system at the time, overtly discriminatory against African people. Those laws have been deleted from the law books. They are no longer applicable, but they have left behind what initially gave back to those laws, which is the prejudice, the inherent prejudice in the people. That is what now we have to deal with, the perception that still prevails and permeates our society in regard to the demographics. So you see what is not overtly discriminatory, but is covertly discriminatory in the briefing patterns at the bar. So the attorneys, how they brief advocates at the bar, you still have the patterns of discrimination where blacks will be overlooked, and blacks and females across the board will generally be overlooked in matters of significance, so-called commercial matters, competition matters, intellectual property matters. And you need to have the banks, private institutions that are involved in those matters also being reformed, also being brought to the table in regard to the changes that needs to be achieved in the legal profession, so that we move along with them, because these are the clients who are involved in litigation from time to time.
Most certainly. So, Advocate Seleka, I mean, the LPC has been at the helm of this conferral. Maybe just talk to us about the process of nominating and securing this honor for Advocate Nokwe.
Yeah. The process started with the Duma Nokwe group itself. So there's a group called Duma Nokwe, which is part of the Johannesburg Bar. It motivated for that appointment. I incidentally happened to be the chairperson of that group. So the motivation was sent out under my name, and it was circulated to other associations like the Johannesburg Council, the General Council of the Bar, I beg your pardon, and the LPC, and other attorneys associations. The LPC then wrote a letter in support of that motivation to the then Minister Simelane at the time, and really spoke well in support of the conferral of the silk status to Duma Nokwe. The process was materially different, in the sense that in Johannesburg, in the Johannesburg Bar, you follow a process of interviews, a peer review process, where those who want to be recommended for silk submit their applications with their CVs, if you like, motivating why they should be recommended for silk. Those applications are then reviewed by members of the Johannesburg Bar. Unfortunately, this is not a universal process, so the other bars do not necessarily follow this process. But the Johannesburg Bar follow that process, quite a rigorous process. Members then give their comments in regard to each candidate who has applied, and those candidates will ultimately come before what we refer to as the Silks Committee. So this is a committee comprising of senior counsels who are serving on the Johannesburg Bar Council, and they are interviewed by this committee based on the comments that are received from the various members of the bar, formulated into groups. So the groups will have submitted these comments, and all sorts of questions are put to them, from transformation initiatives, character, reputation, the nature of cases they do, and number of cases that are reported, the whole range, and leadership and so on. Well, obviously, Duma Nokwe couldn't follow that process. And so in his case, we simply did the motivation, right, and setting out his credentials and what he did in the past. And that motivation was supported and fortunately accepted.
Lastly, and very quickly, Advocate, was it deliberate that this then coincides with his reburial?
I wouldn't say. The process ultimately is once, and in the case of his of the motivation for him to be conferred, the process is the one I have explained at the Joburg Bar. The Silks will make the recommendation to the minister, to the president. But the process is that recommendation goes to the minister passes it on to the president. Now, I've looked at the letter here. The motivation for Duma Nokwe to be conferred was made last year in March, March 2024. I can't say to you it's a deliberate timing on the part of the president. I don't know.
Right.
That the latest patents are only signed now and conferred to Duma Nokwe.
All right. Advocate Pule Seleka, thank you so much for your time and just the efforts in ensuring that the honor for Advocate Nokwe is in what it is, and so that the legacy of his name, especially for those young legal counsels who are looking up to someone like him, are able to look up to him in that way. Thank you so much for your time and for your efforts this afternoon.